Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening.
The morning sea mist hung thick over the coastal waters as John maneuvered his small boat through the familiar choppy waves. The dull roar of the boat's engine was a comforting sound that spoke of routine and solitude. As he reached his usual fishing spot, he cut the engine and prepared his nets with practiced hands. "Looks like a good day for a catch, eh?" he muttered to himself, peering into the water as if it would reveal its secrets. Just as he cast the net wide across the sparkling surface, the radio crackled to life. "Hey, John, how's the old sea treating you today?" The voice belonged to Mike, a fellow fisherman and the closest thing John had to a friend out here. "Quiet as a grave, Mike. Let's hope the fish think it's a party," John responded, keeping his eyes on the expanding ripples in the water. "May your nets always be heavy," Mike replied, a traditional fisherman's blessing. The radio went silent again, leaving John to his thoughts. Hours slipped by with little to show. Just as John considered relocating, the net suddenly felt heavier than usual. "Finally," he grunted, hauling it in with anticipation. But the weight and resistance were unusual. Fearing debris or a large sea creature, he pulled with all his might. What emerged from the water took his breath away. Entangled in the net, shimmering with iridescent scales and gasping for breath, was what seemed like a woman from the waist up and a fish from the waist down. Her eyes, large and bewilderingly human, fixed on him with an intense, piercing gaze. "Holy, what in the world?" John stumbled backwards, nearly losing his balance. "I mean you no harm," the creature spoke, her voice a melodious tone that seemed to resonate with the sea itself. You can talk?" John's voice was a mix of awe and disbelief. "Yes, I can. Please, could you help me out of this net?" Her request snapped John back to reality, and despite the shock, he began to untangle her with careful hands. As he worked, he asked, "What are you? Where did you come from?" "My name is Mira. I'm from Aquarius, far beneath the ocean waves in a realm not known to your kind." Her tone was calm, belying the surreal nature of the situation. Once freed, Mira attempted to move but winced in pain. "I think I've injured my tail." Without thinking twice, John helped her into his boat. "I can't just leave you here. Let's get you somewhere safe to figure this out." As they headed back to shore, John radioed Mike. "Mike, I'm coming in with a special situation. I need some help and discretion." "Understood," Mike replied, his voice betraying his curiosity. Upon reaching the dock, Mike was waiting, his expression a mix of concern and incredulity as he caught sight of Mira. "John, this is way above our pay grade," he whispered, helping to carry Mira off the boat. Together, they managed to get Mira into John's old shed by the beach, which he had converted into a makeshift living space. "Thank you, both of you," Mira said, looking between the two men with gratitude. "I'm far from home, and it seems I'm in need of allies." John, still processing the morning's events, nodded. "We'll figure this out, Mira. But first, you need to rest." He turned to Mike. "We need to keep this under wraps until we understand more." Mike nodded, his usual joking demeanor replaced by a seriousness that the situation warranted. "You've got my word, John, and my help." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the secluded shed, John looked at Mira, an alien being in distress, yet exuding an aura of regal dignity. Despite the myriad of questions racing through his mind, one thing was clear. His life had changed forever with this morning's catch. The next morning, John rose early, his mind still reeling from the previous day's events. As he approached the shed, he could hear Mira humming a soft, lilting melody that seemed to stir the air itself. He knocked gently before entering. "Good morning, Mira. How are you feeling today?" John asked, his voice cautious yet warm. Mira turned, her luminous eyes brightening. "Good morning, John. I am feeling better, thank you. Your world is quite fascinating." John smiled, pulling up a chair. "I'm glad to hear you're better. We need to figure out what to do next. You can't stay hidden here forever." Mike entered the shed, carrying a tray with coffee and some food. "Morning, you too. I brought breakfast. Figured we'd all need a good start to handle whatever this is." He set the tray down, looking at Mira with a mix of curiosity and concern. Mira nodded her thanks, her attention on the steaming coffee. "This is a delightful brew," she remarked, sipping carefully. John chuckled. "Glad you like it. So, tell us more about where you come from, Mira. Maybe there's a way we can get you back." Mira set her cup down, her expression turning somber. "Aquarius is deep underwater, a place where beings like me live in harmony with the ocean. I was exploring new currents when I was caught by a strong undertow and swept away to your surface world." Mike leaned forward, his brows furrowed. "And there's no way back on your own?" "No, my navigation tools were lost, and I am not familiar with your waters. I need to find a beacon." She paused, realizing the term might confuse them. "A signal emitter, which my people use for deep-sea travel." John nodded thoughtfully. "We might be able to rig something up. I know a guy, Danny, who's good with tech stuff. Maybe he can help us make sense of your technology." "That would be most appreciated," Mira replied, a flicker of hope crossing her features. The three spent the morning discussing various aspects of human and Aquarian technology. John called Danny, who agreed to come over and look into the situation. Later that afternoon, Danny arrived, his curiosity piqued by John's cryptic phone call. After introductions and a brief explanation, Mira brought out the remnants of her navigation gear, intricate devices with unfamiliar symbols and materials. Danny whistled softly. "This is way beyond anything I've tinkered with, but I'm up for a challenge. Let's see what we can do." Over the next several hours, the shed transformed into a makeshift lab, with Danny leading the technical efforts, occasionally asking Mira for clarification. Mike proved useful with his knack for scavenging spare parts, while John coordinated the overall efforts, ensuring everyone had what they needed. As evening approached, they had a basic understanding of the technology. "I think we can create a rudimentary signal emitter," Danny concluded, wiping his brow. "It won't be pretty, but it should work." Mira looked at each of them, her gratitude evident. "Thank you, all of you. I am in your debt." John shook his head. "No debts here, Mira. Just doing what's right." Mike grinned. "Plus, it's not every day we get to help a real-life alien. Right, Danny?" Danny laughed. "Definitely one for the books. Let's get this thing built." That night, as they worked together under the dim light of the shed, a sense of camaraderie and purpose united them. Despite the uncertainty of their task, they were determined to give Mira a chance to return home, driven not just by the challenge, but by a genuine desire to aid their new friend. The next few days were a blur of activity and innovation. Danny, with his deep knowledge of electronics, led the efforts to build a signal emitter for Mira. John and Mike, though less versed in technology, proved indispensable for sourcing materials and assembling components under Danny's guidance. As they worked in the shed, the bonds between them strengthened. Their shared goal of helping Mira return home fostered a deep sense of camaraderie and trust. One afternoon, while taking a break from the technical challenges, they gathered around a makeshift table littered with tools and circuit boards. "So, Mira," John began, handing her a cup of coffee, "tell us more about your world. What's it like living underwater?" Myra's face lit up with the question. "Aquarius is very different from Earth. Our cities are built in harmony with the ocean currents. We harness energy from the water itself and live in a balance with the marine life around us." Mike, always the curious one, leaned in. "Sounds amazing. And you all look like you?" Mira nodded. "Yes, though there are variations in color and features, much like your own species." Danny, who had been tinkering with a circuit board, looked up. "I can't imagine what it must be like to navigate deep waters. How do you find your way?" "Our navigation is based on the magnetic fields of the planet," Mira explained. "The devices I had were tuned to these fields. That's what we need this emitter to replicate, in a way." John exchanged a look with Danny, both impressed by the complexity of Myra's world. "Danny, do you think we can mimic these fields with what we've got?" Danny wiped his hands on a rag, thinking. "It's tricky, but not impossible. We'll need to create a coil system that can generate a similar magnetic pulse. It won't be as sophisticated as Myra's tech, but it should do the job." The discussion turned technical as Danny sketched out ideas on a piece of scrap paper, illustrating his thoughts on how to build the device. John and Mike contributed ideas, drawing on their own experiences with marine navigation and electronics. As the sun began to set, they tested their makeshift emitter for the first time. The device, cobbled together from parts salvaged by Mike and assembled by Danny, with Myra's guidance, was crude but hopeful. Mira, holding the emitter, tried to tune it. The first attempts were met with silence. Each failure was a setback, but the group's determination didn't wane. Finally, on the fourth attempt, a faint hum filled the air, a sign that the emitter was producing a magnetic pulse. "It's working," Danny exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and joy. "Yes, it's a weak signal, but it's correct. We need to boost the power, and it should reach my people." John clapped Danny on the back. "You're a genius, man. We're actually doing this." The next step was to enhance the power of the emitter. They worked into the night, tweaking and adjusting. Mike rummaged through his old boat supplies for a more powerful battery, while John helped Danny rewire the emitter to handle the increased load. Around midnight, exhausted but exhilarated, they tested the enhanced emitter. This time, the hum was loud and clear, resonating with a powerful pulse that vibrated softly in their chests. Mira took the emitter and aimed it toward the ocean. "If my people are within range, they will hear this. It may take time for them to respond, but we've done everything we can." The group stood together outside the shed, watching the stars and listening to the distant call of the sea. They shared a quiet moment, each man aware that they were part of something extraordinary. The night air, filled with the salty tang of the sea and the promise of distant shores, reminded them that their world had just become a little bit larger, and their place in it a little more profound. The successful testing of the emitter filled the shed with a palpable sense of achievement, but it also brought a new set of challenges. The next morning, as John and Mike cleaned up the clutter of overnight work, Mira approached them with an unusual proposition. "John, Mike, would you like to see some of what I've been describing? I can share a part of Aquarius with you." "In a way," Mira offered, her voice tinged with excitement. John looked puzzled. "What do you mean? How would we even do that?" Mira smiled, producing a small, intricately crafted device from her belongings. "With this, it's a visual transmitter. It can show you images from my home. If the signal from last night reached my people and they respond—" Mike, ever curious, leaned closer. "Like a live video feed from underwater? That sounds incredible." "Yes, exactly," Mira confirmed, setting up the device. "If we're lucky, we might be able to connect soon." The men gathered around as Mira activated the device. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. Then, the screen flickered to life, displaying a stream of stunning visuals from Aquarius. They saw vast underwater cities glowing with bioluminescence, towering structures crafted from coral and stone, and a myriad of aquatic creatures weaving through the water. "Wow, it's like another world down there," John marveled, his eyes wide with wonder. "It is my world," Mira said, a hint of homesickness in her voice. "I miss it, but I'm here to help bridge our worlds, not just to return to mine." Moved by her words, Mike suggested, "Why don't we try to replicate some of your underwater experiences here? We can't go underwater like you, but maybe we can learn more about it." John nodded in agreement. "That's a great idea. Mira, could you teach us more about your ocean? Maybe even help us understand better how to protect our own." Mira was delighted by the proposal. "I would love that. Let's start at the shore. I can show you more about marine life and how we might learn from each other's conservation efforts." Armed with snorkel gear and Myra's guidance, they spent the day at the beach. Mira explained the ecological dynamics of coastal waters, pointing out species of plants and fish, explaining their roles in the ecosystem, and demonstrating techniques her people used to maintain harmony with the sea. As the day wore on, John and Mike became increasingly engrossed in Myra's lessons. They took notes and asked questions, eager to absorb as much knowledge as possible. "The balance you maintain is something we need to learn," John reflected, watching the sunset over the water. "We could start community projects based on what we're learning from you," Mike, inspired, added, "and maybe even integrate some of this into local school curriculums. Kids should know about this stuff early on." Mira was touched by their enthusiasm. "I'm glad to see you both so engaged. Sharing this makes me feel closer to home, even when I'm far from it. As they packed up their gear, the emitter beeped softly. Another signal had come through. It was a message from Myra's people, acknowledging the connection and expressing a desire to learn more about Earth. This could be the beginning of something bigger than we imagined, John said, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility. Yes, a bridge between our worlds, built on understanding and cooperation, Mira agreed, looking between John and Mike. They returned to the shed, minds racing with ideas and possibilities. That night, they drafted plans for an ongoing exchange of knowledge and resources with Myra's world, hopeful about the future and the role they would play in fostering interstellar friendship. As the project of bridging two worlds progressed, the trio found themselves deeply immersed in their new roles as ambassadors of Earth. Mira, with her vast knowledge of marine biology and technology, became the primary consultant, while John and Mike facilitated the logistics and community outreach. One calm evening, as they reviewed their plans in John's living room, Myra's demeanor shifted. She seemed reflective, almost melancholic. Sensing a change, John turned to her, concern etching his features. "Mira, you've been quiet tonight. What's on your mind?" Mira looked up, her eyes shimmering slightly. "I was thinking about my home, about how music and song are central to our culture. Here, I haven't shared that part of me yet. It's a piece of home I can offer you." Mike perked up, always eager for new experiences. "You mean your songs? We'd love to hear them, Mira. Music's a universal language, right?" Mira smiled, a soft warmth returning to her face. "Yes, exactly. Would you like to hear the Song of the Deep? It's a piece that embodies our connection to the ocean." John nodded, settling back. "We'd be honored." Mira stood gracefully and closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. As she began to sing, the room filled with a haunting melody that seemed to ebb and flow like the tide. The notes were pure and clear, resonating in a way that made both men feel the depth of the ocean in their very bones. "That was incredible," John said. Once the last note faded, it felt like being underwater. "It's meant to remind us of our origins and our responsibilities," Mira explained. "It's a song of connection, not just to the sea, but to all living things." Mike, moved by the performance, suggested, "Why don't we incorporate this into our community project? Music could help people feel a connection to your world in a way words can't." John agreed enthusiastically. "It's a great idea. We can set up a cultural exchange night at the community center. Music, talks, maybe even some live demonstrations of the tech we've been working on." The plans for the cultural exchange night quickly took shape. They decided to open the event with Myra's song, followed by interactive sessions where Mira would explain more about her world's technology and environmental practices. As the day of the event approached, the local media caught wind of the unusual collaboration, and interest in the event surged. The community center was packed on the night, with people of all ages curious to learn about the mysterious visitor and her aquatic world. John opened the event, briefly introducing Mira and the purpose of the night. When Mira took the stage to sing, a hushed awe fell over the crowd. Her voice, ethereal and profound, captivated everyone, creating a shared moment of profound connection and wonder. Following the performance, Mike led a Q&A session, where Mira answered questions about Aquarius and her experiences on Earth. The audience was particularly fascinated by the similarities and differences in conservation efforts between the two worlds. The event was a resounding success, sparking a series of monthly meetings that continued to draw attention and support. Schools began to integrate Myra's teachings into their curriculums, and local environmental groups sought her advice on sustainable practices. As the project grew, John, Mike, and Mira became local celebrities, known for their pioneering work in interstellar communication and environmental advocacy. The trio, once just neighbors and friends, now found themselves at the heart of a movement that might one day change the world. The cultural exchange nights had become a cornerstone of the community, drawing more attendees each time. As the trio's project expanded, so did their relationship dynamics. The deep bond between John and Mira gradually transformed into something more intimate, a connection neither had anticipated but both silently acknowledged. One evening, after another successful community event, John, Mike, and Mira decided to celebrate with a quiet dinner at John's house. The atmosphere was light and joyful, yet an undercurrent of deeper emotions simmered between John and Mira. Mike, ever observant, decided to step out early, giving John and Mira some space. "I'll leave you two to clean up. Big day tomorrow, got to rest up," he said with a wink, excusing himself. Alone together, John and Mira began to tidy up, moving in a comfortable silence that spoke volumes of their closeness. As they finished, John turned to Mira, his voice hesitant yet sincere. "Mira, these past weeks, they've been incredible. I've learned so much from you, about your world and about myself." Mira smiled softly, her gaze meeting his. "I feel the same, John. You and Mike have given me a sense of belonging here that I didn't think was possible." There was a pause, a breath of unspoken words hanging in the air. Finally, John stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "And in all this, I've found myself thinking about you, about us, more than I expected." Mira reached out, her hand lightly touching his. "John, I have felt it too. This connection, it's unlike anything I've ever known. But I worry about what it means, for me and for you." John took her hand in his resolve clear. "Whatever it means, I want to explore it with you. No expectations, just to see where this journey takes us." Encouraged by his words, Mira nodded, and slowly, they moved closer. John hesitated, searching her eyes for any doubt. Finding none, he leaned in, and their lips met in a gentle, exploratory kiss. The kiss deepened, filled with the emotions that had been building between them. It was a kiss of discovery, of acknowledgement of their shared feelings. Pulling back slightly, John looked at Mira with a tender smile. "Was that okay?" Mira laughed quietly, a sound like music to John's ears. "More than okay. It felt right." They spent the rest of the evening talking openly about their feelings, about the possible future. It was a conversation filled with laughter and serious moments as they navigated the newness of their relationship. Later, as they sat side by side on the couch, Mira resting her head on John's shoulder, she spoke softly. "John, being with you like this, it makes me feel at home in a way I didn't expect." John kissed the top of her head, his voice warm. "And you've made this place feel like a new home for me, too. No matter what happens next, I'm grateful for that." Their relationship added a new layer of complexity to their project, but also brought a new depth of joy and contentment to their lives. As they continued their work, now not just as partners but as a couple, they found that their love for each other provided a strength that carried them forward, through challenges and successes alike. As the chapter of that evening closed, they both knew they were embarking on a profound and beautiful journey together, one that had started with a serendipitous catch and had blossomed into a deep and meaningful connection. As the days turned into weeks, the connection between John and Mira deepened, entwining their lives in ways neither had anticipated. However, the peaceful routine they had established was soon disrupted by an unexpected development. One morning, as John and Mira walked along the beach discussing plans for another community event, Mira's emitter device suddenly beeped loudly, signaling an incoming message. John looked over, noticing the concern etching across Mira's face as she read the message. "What is it, Mira? Bad news?" Mira sighed, her voice tense. "It's from my people. They've located where I am, and they're coming to take me back. They say it's imperative I return immediately." The news hit John like a cold wave. "But you can't just leave. What about everything here? What about us?" "I don't know, John," Mira replied, her voice a mix of frustration and sadness. "I have responsibilities to my world, duties I can't ignore. But leaving you, leaving all this," she gestured around, "it's not what I want." Feeling a surge of helplessness, John suggested, "Let's talk to Mike and Danny. Maybe there's something we can do." Gathering later that day in John's living room, the group discussed the situation. Mike was the first to break the silence after Mira explained her predicament. "Isn't there a way to negotiate with your people? Maybe if they understood what you've started here." Mira shook her head. "Our laws are strict. The knowledge and experiences I've gained here are valuable, but they might not see it as enough to warrant an extended stay." Danny, always the thinker, chimed in, "What if we set up a communication with them? A sort of conference to discuss your contributions directly? It's worth a shot. John nodded in agreement. Anything to keep you here, Mira? Let's at least try. Mira was touched by their support. I'll send a message, propose a meeting. I can't promise it will change their minds, but I can try. The next few days were tense as they awaited a response. When it finally came, it was a mixed blessing. Mira's people agreed to a meeting, but insisted it take place on Aquarius. If Mira chose to argue for an extension on Earth, she would need to do so in person. As the day of her departure approached, the community rallied around her, expressing their support and sharing their hopes for her return. John, in particular, struggled with the looming possibility of her permanent departure. The night before Mira was to leave, she and John took a long walk along the beach, the same place where they first truly connected. John, these months with you, with all of our friends, have changed me, Mira confessed, holding his hand tightly. No matter what happens, I will carry this experience with me. John stopped, facing her, his eyes searching hers. Mira, I love you. That won't change, no matter where you are. And I'll keep fighting for a future where we can be together. Somehow, Mira leaned into him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I love you too, John, and I will fight as well. For us, for this bond we have. Thank you for everything. They embraced, the ocean breeze wrapping around them, a poignant reminder of the cycles of nature, of meetings and partings. The following morning, as they stood at the port waiting for Mira's people, John handed her a small package. Something to remember us by, he said with a shaky smile. Mira accepted it, placing her hand over his. I don't need reminders, John, but thank you. I'll come back if it's within my power. With a final hug, Mira turned to join her people, leaving John and their friends on the shore, watching as she disappeared into the horizon. The challenge of choices had never felt so profound, nor the future so uncertain. The morning of Mira's departure dawned clear and bright, the sea calm as if to ease her journey back to Aquarius. John, Mike, and Danny stood at the dock, the weight of the impending farewell hanging heavily upon them. John watched the horizon, his heart heavy. I never thought I'd be standing here, saying goodbye like this, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Mike clapped him on the shoulder, trying to offer a smile. She'll be back, John. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that Mira's as stubborn as they come. She won't let this be the end. Danny nodded in agreement. Besides, we've set up the best communication system possible with their technology. We'll keep in touch, and who knows what the future holds. Their conversation was interrupted as a sleek, silvery vessel appeared on the horizon. It moved smoothly towards the dock, its design unlike anything on Earth. As it approached, the reality of the situation sank in deeper. Mira stepped forward, her expression composed yet her eyes betraying a sadness similar to John's. It's time, she said simply, her voice steady but soft. John took a deep breath and managed a nod. We've done everything we could, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Remember, you have friends here, Mira. This is also your home now. Mira smiled, her eyes moist. I will never forget that, and I will do everything I can to come back, to continue what we started. She turned to Mike and Danny, expressing her gratitude. Thank you, both of you, for everything, for your friendship, your support, and your brilliant minds. Keep the project going until I return. Mike, ever the optimist, grinned. You just try and stop us. We'll have even more to show you when you get back. Danny, more reserved, added, Take care, Mira. Safe journey. As Mira boarded the vessel, she looked back one last time, her gaze lingering on John. Without words, their farewell was spoken in the silent language of their eyes, a promise of hope amidst the sorrow of parting. The vessel began to pull away, and John felt an ache in his chest as he watched it disappear into the distance. The dock felt emptier than it had just moments before, the air colder. Heads up, John. We'll keep the line open, keep talking to her. This isn't goodbye. Not really, Danny said, trying to break the somber mood. Yeah, John replied, his voice low. It's just, until next time. The three men stood watching the horizon long after the vessel had vanished, each lost in his thoughts. Finally, Mike broke the silence. "Let's go grab some breakfast. My treat. We can plan our next steps." John nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Yeah, let's keep busy." For her. As they walked away from the dock, the project that had brought them together now served as a bridge between their world and Myra's, a testament to the bonds they had formed. In the weeks and months that followed, they expanded their environmental efforts, using the knowledge Mira had shared to better their own practices and educate others. Their work gained international attention, drawing support from far beyond their small coastal community. John, Mike, and Danny became advocates for global cooperation in marine conservation, driven by the hope of one day reuniting with Mira. John often stood at the dock in the evenings, looking out at the vast ocean that both separated and connected him to Mira. And in the quiet solitude, he could almost hear the faint melody of her song, a reminder of the bond they shared and a beacon calling her home.